So we'll get started. If anyone kind of joins throughout, Clara's just going to let them in. But this is our fifth talk this week. We're on the final expert talk for professionals as part of our Muzzle March. So we're going to have a good chat. If you've got any questions or if you have experienced anything that we're talking about and you'd like to add to the conversation, please feel free to pop it in the chat. Clara's going to be keeping an eye, and if you have any technical difficulties as well, just drop it in the chat and Clara will maybe sort it. We'll try and do a Q&A at the end if anyone's got any questions, but you can also, I'll give you my email address at the end as well, so you can always drop me an email if you've got anything pressing that you think of afterwards. So just quickly introduce myself. So my name's Annie. I'm the Community Education and Engagement Officer at the Muzzle Movement. So before I joined the Muzzle Movement, I was a rehab trainer for a UK rescue organisation, and then I was a self-employed trainer after my maternity leave as well. I'm accredited with IMDT, APDT and ABTC with those. So I've got plenty of experience kind of with training. The Muzzle Movement was primarily set up as a kind of advocacy and a safe space for muzzled dog guardians to go on Instagram. It's kind of grown and developed from there and turned into a company that designs and manufactures muzzles that are welfare friendly. You know, we really put the dog's welfare at the front of everything that we do. We're also really passionate about educating professionals, guardians, and the general public about ethical muzzle use. And we're really passionate about the promotion of positive reinforcement-based muzzle training methods as well. So the talk tonight is a bit of a different one for us. It's an area that we're really not experiencing at all. So we're really, really grateful to welcome Rebecca Norton-Child of Pup Starts Breeders. Rebecca was previously a leader of London Borough of Waltham Forest Dog Warden Service and is now a 5-star licensed dog breeder. She's an ex-licensing officer and a woman who is absolutely committed to changing the breeding industry for good, which is exactly what we need. Pup Starts Breeders deliver dog breeding information, advice and education needed to be an ethical and reputable dog breeder, making a difference in the world. So welcome, Rebecca. Thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited to hear your insights. Like I say, this is not an area that we are very experienced in.
No, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I think it's really important to be holistic when we're talking about these kinds of topics. And I think, how it all starts at the beginning of the dog journey is a really important conversation. So thank you for having me.
No, absolutely. We're really excited. So we'll jump straight in. Like I say, if anyone's got any questions or anything, pop them in the chat. We'll keep an eye on it, or we'll do a little Q&A at the end. So this might seem like a bit of an unusual talk to have arranged. When you kind of think of muzzles, you rarely associate that with puppies. Breeders should have a huge responsibility when it comes to the early socialization of puppies, and a lot of good and ethical breeders are doing that. But we also have to think of the genetics playing into temperament, the experiences that puppies have when they're with the litter can have a huge impact on their future. When we talk about early socialization, we usually think about people, environments, noises, things like that. Why do you think that perhaps equipment and especially muzzles are so often left out of that conversation?
I think it's the misunderstanding around what socialization actually means.
Yeah.
Think people think, as you say, they think it's a puppy being introduced to people and other dogs, and it goes to a puppy training class to become socialized so that it's social and happy. I think that's the kind of connotation, and actually socialization is the introduction of new and novel. And then after we have socialized the puppy to those things, we want to habituate it to those things so that they become the new normal. So I think first and foremost, items get forgotten because we don't have the same association with it. We don't think about it as part of socialization. So when I'm teaching my students at Pup Starts Breeders, we deliver nationally accredited qualifications to breeders and pet professionals that want to learn more about puppies and how to raise them. And one of the qualifications we've just released is a qualification for breeders to learn more about canine behaviour and body language and how that impacts upon breeders. And part of that qualification is me explaining about a behaviour case that I was working on with a client in Oswestry whose dog decided that it was no longer this Staffordshire Bull Terrier. She was like 4 years old, and the bin man had moved the bin, how very dare they, from the right-hand side of the garden to the left-hand side of the garden. And this dog had had a complete meltdown about this.
Oh,
She'd
bloody.
opened the back door, gone to let the dog out for a wee in the morning, and the dog was like,
It's mind blowing.
absolutely not. Somebody's put the bin in a different place. And it
Oh,
was terrified of then going outside in the garden, which was causing problems because it wasn't going out for a wee.
yeah.
So, just something as, you wouldn't even think about it, would you? Yeah. But because that dog's environment had changed, and obviously this big black bin that had been on one side of the garden and didn't even register to the dog every time had been moved, and it completely threw the dog, because it wasn't used to changes in its environment in that way. So the impact for that dog was actually quite significant, and for the owner was quite significant. And they had to spend a lot of time to try to, reassure the dog and, habituate the dog to the bin being in all different places in the garden, because we had to kind of mitigate against this being the issue again. My point being is it was something in its own environment that was new that frightened it. So I think when we have the muzzle conversation, muzzles tend to be brought in at times when we're already running in a high octane manner. Okay.
Yeah.
So a muzzle is used historically, not in more recent years, but historically, because the dog needs to be controlled
Yeah.
to protect the people.
Mhm.
So at that point, we can pretty safely assume that the dog's already very stressed. If
Mhm.
they feel the need to be muzzling it, we've got a dog that is not in a great space, not in a great place. Introducing something new at that point, not
Yeah.
really what we want to be doing. So from my perspective, when I'm talking to breeders about raising litters of puppies, anything that we can be introducing that becomes habituated, the new norm, nothing of any consequence. It's just another piece of plastic for you to have to chew on if you want to, no biggie. I think it's just invaluable learning for them, invaluable. And if you do it at the right time, in the right way, it just becomes like, I'm going to brush you today.
Yeah.
Okay, then,
Just
it's
another
just
thing that
a
they do.
nothing thing. It doesn't need to be scary. It doesn't need to be frightening in any way, alarming for the dog. Just becomes another piece of equipment like a collar or a lead.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're really looking at the stigma issue again, the fact that it's just not historically been done in practice,
Yeah,
and yeah, just kind of people's perceptions of it are not as a preparatory thing right now,
yeah,
and that's obviously
absolutely.
something we need to work on
Yeah,
changing.
absolutely. I'm actually in the process of getting some video footage together, of dogs when they are in a scared state at the groomers or at the vets, when professionals that have to work with these dogs are having to use muzzles, in a way that we would prefer they weren't, at a time when the dog's already stressed, as opposed to a dog, and because I want to do the, your dog your lovely dog with its lovely, you know, balanced temperament and with no behavioural issues, he's never bitten anyone before, he's actually in pain at the vets, and its response to pain is a very different response to the response you're used to seeing, and they've had to muzzle it.
Absolutely.
Shock horror,
Yeah.
yeah, and I part of the course content is that I want to develop into video footage so that they can see, your lovely, balanced, happy, friendly Labrador,
Yeah.
trying to take the vet's face off because
Yeah.
it's, a thorn stuck in its paw or whatever's
Oh,
going on, and because people
yeah.
don't view their animals in that way, do they? They don't see the
Even the
extreme.
most kind of stoic, the most tolerant dog can absolutely reach their limit, especially when you've got pain involved. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, for breeders who are already doing thoughtful early socialization processes and they are starting to do kind of equipment desensitization before they go home, how easy do you think it is to include something like a muzzle introduction? I know it's something that you've done with your latest lab litter because you've sent us some beautiful photos of it. And
Well,
if a breeder
Alice,
kind of if they wanted to start tomorrow, what would a simple, realistic kind of muzzle intro plan look like within a litter setting?
I think, somewhere between 3 and 4 weeks, your puppies are mobilizing. They're up, they're bopping around the whelping box, they're starting to hopefully become introduced to new and novel items in the whelping box, and the muzzle just becomes one of those new and novel items. things. The one thing that I will say about it is that I wouldn't want them to be left unattended because there's straps and holes and, can
Absolutely.
be
Yeah.
seen as a hazard. There are bits that can be chewed off of it if you had a very determined puppy. So I wouldn't be
100%.
leaving a muzzle unattended with a litter of puppies. However, you know, popping it in the whelping box and letting them crawl all over it, and one puppy grabs the end of it and the other puppy grabs the strap, and they have a I'm having it, no, you're having it kind of conversation, which is exactly what I was trying to take the photographs of for you guys.
Yeah.
And just making it that it's just another item and nothing for them to be worried about. Now, my puppies are older now. And as they've grown and that litter have developed, we have moved it on to one of us will actually hold the muzzle on the floor, and we've put a bit of squeezy cheese in the end of it.
Wow.
Yeah,
Amazing.
so that they're sticking their noses in, having a little lick, and then pulling their
That's
not at
amazing.
the point yet where we're strapping it on the back of their head.
Yeah,
You
of
know,
course. Yeah.
it is a very staged approach. We don't want to create any alarm, especially in young puppies, because it's the other side of the coin is you don't want to make them frightened of something that by overstepping the mark and rushing it. But we are at the point where these puppies are confidently sticking their noses in
Amazing.
and having some squeezy cheese at the end, and then they're straight in. You show them the muzzle, they're putting their faces in, they're like, where's the cheese?
I just think it's a weird shaped bowl, don't they?
100%. They're just not bothered in any way, shape, or form by it. They're really, really not.
That
And I
is
think,
so incredible though, to have puppies go
yeah,
into their homes, their first home, already being able to target a muzzle, like that blows my mind. That is amazing. If
they're
if
not.
we could if we could make that normal, if that could become almost standard practice,
Mm.
it would just save so much stress and trauma. Like
Yeah.
I'm not even talking about fully muzzle training because we're trying to be realistic. Not everybody is going to have the time and the resources to want to do that. But even if we could just get a good positive introduction from day dot, it's just gonna make their lives so much easier long term if they do ever need to wear a muzzle.
So much, and I think these are conversations that need to be had. I mean, when you consider, every dog has the potential to end up at the vets,
Mm.
okay, and end up at the vets having treatment for something that's painful. And as we've said, dogs do react differently under pressure, especially when they're in pain. So that's one element to it. But when you think about all of the coated breeds of dog that are likely to end up, or need to end up at the groomers on a regular basis to be groomed, and the amount of dogs that, so part of, again, being a training provider, what I do is that I go into dog grooming salons up and down the country, and I perform endpoint assessments for apprentices that are completing their dog grooming qualifications.
Oh wow.
And so I am regularly, and also animal care qualifications. So I am regularly in daycare centres, I am regularly in grooming salons, and I see lots of dogs who are there because they're having a haircut or they are being cared for in a daycare setting. And, their owners have this complete misconception that they're having a lovely time and that they're going to go off to the groomers and they're going to have a pamper session.
Pampered, yeah.
And far from it. And not because the groomer's not doing their job, just because dogs don't have the same perception of a haircut as we do. And daycare, they're at daycare and they're having a lovely time playing with their friends. And of course, not every dog wants to go and play with its friend. So, you see these settings, and actually you see muzzles being used because the dogs are not behaving in a way their owners expect them to in any way, shape, or form. And we see quite a lot of I see quite a lot of muzzles being poorly fitted because they're rushed on the dog because it's a reaction to something that's happening in that moment, and they are quite commonly putting the mesh muzzle on rather
Yeah,
than
the
plastic.
like the
Yeah,
occlusion type
they don't
muzzles.
fit, they cut in, they're not, I'm not a fan, I have to say. They impede breathing and they press down on areas of the dog's sensitive nose, etc., etc. And so, I see a rush job being done because at that moment in time, they've got to deal with a situation that's
Yeah.
evolving in front of them, and they have to keep their staff safe, they have to keep themselves safe, their fingers safe, and the other dogs. They have a duty of care to the other dogs in that environment. So if there is anything we can be doing to prevent against that and have a dog that goes into a grooming salon or a daycare setting comfortable to be muzzled, why would you not?
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
you know,
And
why would you
it
not?
we just kind of want to create this kind of, it's just another piece of equipment thing. Like we're doing
Yeah,
lots of work to try and normalize muzzle use. So it is just seen as like another bit of kit that a dog wears. We were speaking to Debbie Lucken of Kids Around Dogs on
yeah,
Monday,
yeah, yeah.
and she absolutely hit the nail on the head, and it's an analogy I'd never even thought of. She was like, a lot of dogs don't actually need a lead to walk. Like a lot of dogs can go to a field and walk off lead, but you would still put that dog on a lead next to a road, even though it doesn't necessarily need it behavior wise.
100%.
Because why on earth wouldn't you? You know, why would you take that risk of something spooking the dog and them shooting into the road and causing an accident or getting hurt?
Yeah,
And I was like, you're absolutely right. I'd never even considered that. Really, it's such a good point. And if
yeah,
we can create muzzles, create the same perception around muzzles that um yeah, you know, they might not need them, but it's such a sensible thing to have as a backup option.
yeah.
It just creates a bit more of a normal kind of scenario for it.
Yeah, it really
Do you
does. And it
think?
normalizes it for the dog. And I think as
Yeah.
well, from the scenario of why are dogs relinquished? So if we have a conversation about why are dogs relinquished, so I'll give you a scenario, one that I dealt with fairly recently, was a recently retired couple
Mm-hmm.
that had a 7-year-old dog that hadn't had a lot of exposure to young children, and they'd recently become grandparents. And the dog growled at the the grandchild. I don't know what the exact circumstances around that were. Actually irrelevant. The dog growled. For these people, the circumstances were irrelevant. Yeah.
Yeah.
The dog growled at the grandchild.
Yeah.
So for many dogs, there's only one thing going to happen
Mm,
at that point.
mm,
If that dog was already used to wearing a muzzle,
mm,
it could growl to its heart's content, wouldn't it?
mm,
Nobody would be so worried, would they? Yeah.
mm.
So again, it's not just about going to the vets, going to the, it's about those everyday scenarios that we can prevent the anxiety or the worry or the question mark by the dog comfortably wearing the muzzle. We are mitigating against, it bit the child. Well, it can't bite the child if he's got a muzzle on.
It means you've already got that safety net in place so that you can
Exactly.
start to do your
Exactly.
behavior
They don't
modification.
have to worry about it. They don't have to be thinking, oh, is it all right to let little Bertie in the front room with, free
Yeah,
the dog?
that's it. Yeah.
Because we're not sure how the dog's going to be. So we're going to pop a muzzle on and mitigate against any issues moving forward for the
Yeah.
dog. Yeah.
It means that you can really focus on changing the way the dog's feeling in those situations as well, rather than worrying about having to work through the training muzzle training protocol before you get to that stage. It means you've got
Exactly.
that safety net and you can then start working on
Yeah.
improving the dog's confidence and actually kind of changing the way the dog's feeling a little bit.
And we have to accept that we're all, here, we're talking about this in a professional manner. For us, going to the nth degree to make sure that we are proofing against potential problems is because we work in this field, we are
Mm.
professional, we see the ramifications of these actions. There are lots and lots of people in the world that don't have the skill, the knowledge, the understanding, that own dogs. They don't really realise the ramifications of non-action, if you
Yeah,
like. They don't have the experience. You don't know what you don't know, do you?
yeah.
So definitely education around this and spreading the word is crucial, crucial.
Absolutely. So we've kind of touched upon one of the big reasons for muzzle use
Have you ever been
being
walking down the street with your best
um,
bro,
bite
and while you're
prevention
walking, you
and
accidentally
to
touch hands? You think to yourself, that looks weird, but
sorted it. So one of the reasons we touched upon a lot is using a muzzle as kind of bite prevention or in times of aggressive behavior use. But there are actually tons of reasons why a muzzle may be useful.
Yeah,
And the kind
loads.
of instant reaction is, oh, it's an aggressive dog, and we know there's so much more than that. For breeders who've perhaps never even had to use a muzzle for one of their own dogs, they've never even considered it before. What kinds of everyday or emergency situations might make that preparation invaluable to them?
I think every dog has the ability to express itself through its
Of
teeth.
course. Yeah, yeah.
Bottom line, they don't write strongly worded letters to the Financial Times. And, things can happen with a dog. Like I say, I think the biggest thing that people don't factor is the pain, or the fear, you know, those two, that fight or flight, I'm cornered. You know, there's only one way of me dealing with this, because you've ignored my body language cues sufficiently that I'm in a space where I've got to be very clear with you about how I'm feeling. That happens all too often, doesn't it? Let's face it. Again, another scenario that I can give you. I was I was in a rural setting, and there was a bit of a hullabaloo over in the corner of the park, and somebody's pet cocker spaniel had got stuck in a wire fence. Okay. And they had gone over, this dog's leg was stuck in the fence, and they'd gone over to get the dog off the fence and to help the dog, obviously, as you would. And because the dog was in pain, it bit the owner's arm. It really bit the owner's arm. I don't mean a little nip, I mean a proper, you know, really lacerated the dog's arm. Lacerated the owner's arm, and the dog had to be cut free from the fence, actually using wire snips, and it was really stressful experience. But that owner, up until that point, would never have imagined that their dog was going to bite them. And actually, the owner went over to, you know, we're going to go and help the dog. I'm going to help my dog. My dog's in pain. It's been hurt. And the first thing that happened was they got bitten.
Yeah, absolutely. I think no matter, you know, everyone kind of think, like you said, people don't never expect their dogs to behave in that way. But it's a potential for every single dog, no matter how good the temperament, no matter how good the kind of general training is. That's not going to override when pain happens. It's not going to override kind of sudden life changes and things like that. So it's just so good to have that as a backup in those scenarios. There's like other things as well. So things like potential changes in laws and stuff, like
your dog,
or just how quickly things changed when the bully ban came in and stuff. Like it can be such a fast process, and different laws can come into kind of local areas as well. So that can be a good reason to have a sensible muzzle training in place as a management tool for scavenging, for prey drive. There's just so many different reasons why it might be beneficial to them.
Yeah, completely. I think, you know, one of my clients used a muzzle because her dog would chew destructively in the home, and
we are
just something that was, you know, a problem for it. You know, like you say, there are multitudes of reasons, and I can't see why you wouldn't introduce your puppies to, you know, if you're a breeder and you're working through an entire socialization plan, I can't see why you wouldn't, you know, introduce them to muzzles. Or what's the negative? I don't see what the negative is, you know.
Do you think that there is kind of a perception that muzzles are kind of linked to a particular breed or size or perceived behaviour risk?
Definitely. I think there's stigma. If you see a dog wearing a muzzle, oh, it must be aggressive, mustn't it? You know, definitely. I think there is a stigma around that, but it is about, you know, breaking those boundaries down and having those conversations and showing people that's part of the reason why, you know, I'm motivated about doing this with a litter of Labrador retrievers, you know, because they're not the breed that you expect to see muzzled. And actually, when I was speaking to my vet about this, and he was saying that the dog that's bitten him more than any other dog is a Labrador. He said, I never see it coming, you know.
Absolutely. And we know that health and comfort can change across a dog's lifetime. As they get older, they get aches and pains and stuff. How can that early preparation support dogs as they do face kind of medical challenges in the future?
I think, again, I think those medical challenges are likely to increase. We see a trend now where more and more dogs are insured. As a result of being insured, they have more opportunities for veterinary intervention. And that means that they're more likely to spend time at the vets being, tested, having investigations done.
Yeah.
It can be, people are using hydrotherapy now for
Yeah.
dogs, and there's massage and all sorts of things. And again, we think about this thing, this is, of a nice pamper treatment, but actually sometimes physio can be uncomfortable. And as I say, dogs don't go, well, they do, but not everybody can spot that their dogs is doing it.
Yeah.
Dogs do actually say, "Hang on a minute, I'm not comfortable with
It's
that."
not always
Miss
spotted
the
though, is it?
signs, don't they? They miss the signs. We're talking about the ladder of aggression or fear, and there are several different steps on that ladder. And unfortunately, we don't all see or spot the early signs, and so dogs learn that their go-to that works is teeth or oh, look at this little dog. Who's this here sharing their screen? Can everybody else see that? Who's this little dog on the screen? So
Yeah,
cute.
not 100%.
So I think that there are lots of different reasons why you would why you would be wearing muzzles and why you would be proofing against it as dogs go into get older. I've got my 14-year-old Labrador laying next to me now, and she hasn't got any teeth in her head, so it would be a very soggy bite if she did attempt it. But with her, we manage fear and the moving around. But I've got a couple of dogs here that if they were approached by somebody that they didn't know and had to have veterinary, I could see them becoming fearful in that kind of environment and reacting badly as a result of it, because it is linked to fear, isn't it? Fear and being ignored when they're trying to explain that they're scared.
Absolutely. I think as well, like your kind of puppy families can often be the perfect people to gently advise and educate on muzzle use, because they're so excited at that point. They're so eager to get started, and they trust you implicitly. They're buying their new baby from you and they want to get as much information as possible. They're going to trust you, they're going to take your advice. In your experience, are there many puppy families who would be eager to get on board with this? It's perhaps not something that you've tried much previously, but how do you feel about that?
I think that the dogs that I breed that are coated, yeah, I think definitely if I'm talking to my Scottish Terrier owners, if I'm talking to a poodle cross owner, for example, if I'm advising owners that have breeds that are going to have to go regularly to the groomers, you would get them on board.
Yeah.
I think when I'm talking to my Labrador owners, they'd be like,
bit more of a challenge.
Like, I don't really see the point in what you're getting. I think some of them would take it on board. But I think it's a harder sell.
Yeah, definitely. You could perhaps
sell.
go like it. Again, I know it's important to not kind of breed stereotype too much, but there are strong breed traits in certain dogs.
Absolutely.
And it might be a case that you go down the kind of scavenging route with your retrievery types.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what we see a lot of Labradors coming in to be muzzled for.
Yeah.
Obviously, it is a range of things, but a lot of the time it is scavenging behaviours. So that's always something that you could kind of encourage them with too.
Definitely. But I think they, again, it's the connotation that muzzle equals aggression.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the conversation needs to be, we're not talking about aggression, we're talking about protection.
Yeah, absolutely.
From a range of different, things, outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the problems with, again, this perception of muzzles is that it is quite an emotional subject for people. There is a lot of that instant kind of rejection, or my dog doesn't need this. I don't want to do this. And especially if you have got this kind of puppy family that they're just bringing home this new puppy, it's probably going to be the thing that's almost furthest from their mind. And some breeders may actually also be a bit worried that potential families may feel like it's a negative reflection on their dogs.
Yeah,
actually, we know that it's a huge green flag. Like if I went to a breeder and they recommended muzzle training, I'd be like, oh my God, yeah, like, you're being so proactive.
Yeah.
But I can completely understand why breeders might worry that it's
Yeah, the connotation is there's something wrong with these dogs that
Exactly,
they need
yeah.
to be
They know
muzzle trained.
something
Yeah,
that
yeah,
that they're not
yeah,
letting on.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
how would you respond to that concern, and how can breeders talk to their puppy families about muzzle training in a way that feels like reassuring and proactive rather than kind of panicky and alarming?
Well, at PupStarts, we have developed an online course called the Puppy Pod. So every puppy owner goes home once they've met their puppy at 6 weeks. They go home and they have access to this online course, which leads them through every element of dog ownership. Okay, from hello you, getting a couple from my old girl. It leads them through every element of puppy ownership, from house training to crate training to the law around microchipping and car travel, everything.
Mm.
And we are in the process of putting together a PDF and some images and some conversation, and hopefully the recording from this evening around why it's important to move away from the stigma and to embrace the muzzle conversation as part of your everyday training. And actually, it's a big conversation that takes 2 minutes a week of your life, that can really proof against the situation with your dog. And as I say, me collating the video evidence that I'm speaking to several groomers about, and my vet about, obviously it's permissions from owners and stuff like that, so it takes a while to get it together, but we're hoping to put this information together so that people can visually see, for example, a perfectly lovely Bichon Frise that is a wonderful family pet in the environment that goes into the groomers and turns into a devil because it's terrified and it doesn't like having its feet touched. But has to have its feet touched because its nails need clipping, and and therefore it needs to have a muzzle on at that point, for example, where people are like, my dog would never behave like that, and like, yeah, actually your dog would, and it's okay. It's a dog, it's allowed.
Normal.
It's normal, it's fine. And moving away from those conversations, and that is going to be part of the puppy pod. So in the same way that I have conversations with my owners about how to crate train, we're going to normalize that conversation around what a muzzle looks like.
Amazing. Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. I'm so excited to hear that. And yeah, if you need any help with anything like that,
thank you.
let me know.
Thank you.
We could
Yeah, no,
definitely support
absolutely.
you.
And I also kind of feel like it goes hand in hand with, I mean, you were talking earlier on about changes of law and things happening quite quickly. I mean, there's a big review coming down from DEFRA shortly around animal welfare. There could be implications in there that we're unaware of that might roll out. We don't know, because like you say, they do bring things and they do move things in legislation through quickly, and there might be things that happen and conversations and legislation that happens that mean that dogs in public spaces or dogs where they're I don't know, we surmise, but
I think
having
you're
the dogs
absolutely right.
prepped for it is never going to be a bad thing, is it?
Exactly, yeah. And I think I've kind of mentioned this. If anybody's watching all of the talks, they're going to get sick of me sick of hearing this, but it's kind of reframing that question a little bit. So kind of thinking about, if dogs are, if you've got the dog in front of you and you're asking the question, does this dog need a muzzle, the answer is most likely going to be no. But if you ask the question, is this dog going to benefit from muzzle training, the answer is pretty much always yes, because at worst case scenario, it's going to get like a fun training session and have this kind of useful skill, even if it's never used again. You've got that benefit, but there's so much potential good that could come from it as well, so kind of framing it as like a life skill for them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I think there is a conversation as well around having the time and space to accurately fit a muzzle to your dog. Because I think there is a really important conversation to be had around it being comfortable for the dog, and it being fitted correctly. So if you've got a dog that isn't struggling to have a muzzle put on, isn't frightened by the fact that you're putting a muzzle on, it allows you to have a muzzle that is correctly fitted, that is comfortable for your animal, and it doesn't escalate the fear and the anxiety in a situation that is potentially imploding, and therefore a muzzle's being put on the dog. So for me, having we've got 4 or 5 muzzles here that hang up behind the dog training door, and I know that part of we've got like a welfare plan here because we've got a fair few dogs, and I know that the pink muzzle fits this dog, and you know what I mean. So and it's written down. So you know, in the event of there being an issue, the right muzzle goes on the right dog, and it becomes a standard thing because you know, you're off to the vets and the dog's going to be, you know, looked at, and the dog might be worried. I mean, you know, just the same way I put the lead in the car, I put the muzzle in the car.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, super sensible. And breeders do and certainly should be for for the most part taking pride in setting puppies up for life. And muzzles can absolutely be a part of future proofing the dogs that you're producing and bringing into the world. If muzzle was spoken about as casually as kind of puppy classes or loose lead walking, like if it was just so normalized, how do you think that would change kind of owner attitudes in the longer term?
I think the stigma would be,
Yeah.
you know, eradicated around it if more people adopted the use of them, and it was normalized. You know, normalized is normalized, isn't it? It just becomes a thing that we do as part of our dog ownership. I
Yeah.
think that's going to benefit, you know, multiple. I think there's also a connotation and an issue around how the professionals are viewed. So, you know, like, I'm really sorry, but we had to muzzle your dog today.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
That's a conversation that, you know, the professionals don't want to tell an owner
Yeah.
they've had to muzzle the dog because it's like they've failed
Yeah.
in some way, you know, and you know, oh, that wasn't very good. That they haven't looked after my dog very well. They've had to muzzle it.
Mm.
You know, I think with, you know, the conversation around dogs being allowed to express their emotions, and it's okay if your dog is frightened of a situation. It's also okay that we need to protect ourselves, you know, from being injured. So all of those conversations need to be had. It's not just about the normalization of the muzzle being worn. The dog expressing itself to that level
Mm.
is also a conversation that needs to be accepted. Dogs are allowed to be dogs. They don't have to be robots.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really, really good points, definitely. I think yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. And I think it goes to show just how much impact breeders can have on literally the dog world on such a wider scale. Like you really are like the first step, aren't you, really? And
Yeah,
if you're
absolutely.
able to kind of reach guardians at that point when they're just bringing this new baby home, you've got so much opportunity to change those stigmas and change that yeah, change half that battle, and that's just gonna build for dog welfare longer term. Yeah,
Absolutely,
you've got a
absolutely.
big
But I
weight on
think,
your shoulders for sure.
yeah, but the problem is, you know, obviously part of the reason, well, the reason that Pup Starts Breeders was formed in the first instance was to educate breeders
Yeah.
around dog breeding practice, not to recruit people to breed dogs, to educate people that have decided that they're going to breed a litter. You know, that is a really, really important point. And once people have decided to breed, they're going to breed.
Mm.
Yeah, and so let's encourage that practice to be happening in the most ethical and the most responsible way possible for the good of the dogs. And I think that once people are in that space, we have a connotation that breeders are, you know, Cruella de Vil. They're not nice people. If they're breeding from dogs, they're profiteering from dogs, and therefore we don't like them. Blah blah. There's thousands of ethical and responsible breeders in the UK that absolutely adore their dogs, and up
Yeah.
until recently, there wasn't anywhere that they were able to get. You know, proper standardized education around how to do it properly. Now there is, and it's becoming more and more popular. You know, there's a suite of qualifications that is available to dog breeders now, and part of that conversation and the ripple effect of those conversations happening through that nationally accredited qualification means that these conversations get to be had and get to be heard. And then, you know, breeders do appreciate and will learn how important it is to be including these conversations with their, you know, with the family that they're going to be sharing their babies with effectively. That's very much how I see it. And having those conversations and making sure the dogs are getting all that they need. But I think a lot of the time, unfortunately, we have a situation where we have people breeding dogs who, you know, don't really appreciate the importance of a complete socialization picture. And, you know, muzzles are a conversation that need to be had 100%. But I think there are sadly many people who are not even on that part, you know, not even on that part. But
Yeah. There's a
you
million
know,
and one boxes to tick before you even get to
yeah,
that.
yeah, absolutely. But it is a, a massively valid conversation that should be up there with all of the elements of the socialization program that a puppy should be going through as standard, as far as I'm concerned. If you're breeding a litter of puppies, you should be committing to, as you say, setting them up for success and proofing them for the future. And that does involve a whole host of protocols that you should be putting them through, muzzles being one of them.
Amazing. Yeah. I think you're just doing the most incredible work. You really are. Like you're, yeah, I can't even, I don't even know where you kind of knew where to start with it, because it's just such a huge, complicated matter. It's so kind of, like you say, you've got so much judgment from outside as well. And what you've, been able to create and pull together is honestly like phenomenal. It's literally changing the lives of
Okay.
dogs, and it's shaping the future of breeding. And I really hope that more and more breeders get involved with it, because you're absolutely doing it the right way, and that's what we need.
Thank you very much. I think, as the same as the muzzle conversation, the ethical breeding conversation is a difficult one, but you don't change behaviours easily, whether it's human behaviours or dog behaviours. You have to put in a bit of work and a bit of grind, but you get there in the end. And I very much view it, in that way. And what's really great about it is that once you have conversations with breeders who maybe aren't very experienced but are really enthusiastic, and you see them absolutely take up the mantle and run with it, and then you're getting emails and pictures and videos of, look at my puppies, they're bossing it, I didn't even know I could do this with them, this is just so fantastic. Whether they're training puppies to be cleaning the house by the time they're 6 weeks old, or crate training or car training, or whatever they're doing with them, muzzle training, anything that they're doing with them that's getting them ready. It's just great, and that is enough to keep me going, because it's making the difference to people. But for each breeder that I can help, then it's dogs that I'm helping, isn't it? It's through the people. So that's the big. I've actually turned into the crazy dog lady. I've bought a dog buggy, and my recent litter of puppies have been
Wheeling them round.
wheeling them round. Absolutely, absolutely. We've got a lovely lady that works with me. Her name's Lacey, and she thinks I've completely lost the plot. And she's like, "Well, I'm going to drop you off and pick you up. That's as far as it goes. I'm not
You can
being
do this on
seen
your
dead in
own.
Oswald Street pushing a litter of puppies around in a pushchair." But it's great.
We
All
used
of
to have that.
it.
We used to work in rescue, and we had a puppy unit. So we had mums come in and have litters on site, and we had the puppy bus, which was
Yeah,
literally just like a big wheelbarrow, basically. We just used to
it's
wheel them
absolutely
around
fantastic.
site.
It's brilliant. We've been taking them to Morrison's, and we've been parking them
Oh,
up, and they've been by the petrol station on the pavement with the cars literally just going past them.
yeah.
And they've just been taking it all in, having a look at, instead of a little tiny puppy being expected to go for its first walk on its
Oh,
own on a pavement next to these big
yeah, where
vehicles.
it's like, oh my
Yeah,
God.
oh my God, I'm on my own. Where's my little mates? What's going on? And they're all sitting in the buggy like, oh, did you see that tractor? He was
Oh,
arriving,
sign me up for one
massive.
of these lads.
They're just, but again, normalising it in a
Yeah.
layered, structured way.
Yeah.
A couple of times they're doing it like that, they're not bothered in the
Not
slightest.
phased.
Same
Yeah.
applies to muzzles.
So if there was one thing today that you would love breeders to start saying to their puppy families about muzzles, so we're not worrying about kind of getting them to do intros, we're not worrying about them encouraging, getting puppy families to sign up to muzzle training. If you could just get them to pass on one message, what would that be?
It's just a piece of equipment.
Yeah. Simple as that.
Just a piece of equipment.
Yeah.
Like a collar, like a lead, like a brush, like a bowl. It's just a piece of equipment.
No drama, no dramatics. It just is what it is.
Yep.
Amazing. Perfect. Thank you so, so much. That was absolutely fascinating. And like I say, because we are quite inexperienced in this world, it is so interesting to hear your take on it and to hear your experience. And like I said, I just think you're doing absolutely phenomenal work. You really are.
Thank you
And I
very much.
really, really hope that people keep getting on board with you, because you're just steering them in the perfect direction. And thank you for everything that you're doing for dogs. It's honestly amazing. If I don't know if we've got any questions, I know things went a bit haywire there. Well done for staying so focused.
I was fighting for my life in this chat.
I'm so
Oh,
glad.
that's the thing, you passed me by. What's gone on?
I don't know. We're not sure.
I think we got maybe like spammed a little bit in there, but anyway, it's fine.
Oh, how it was ticketed.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Committed to the spam.
Amy said she was enjoying the show. Have we missed the show, girls?
Clara was freaking. I could just see her like. Right, have we got any questions anywhere? We've got some cute dogs. Right, I'm just scrolling through now.
No, I don't think there was any questions.
No.
No, so a couple of nice bits, like Amy sort of related to quite a bit of it through there, and a couple of people sort of said, you know,
Lovely.
they've experienced the same. So yeah, but I haven't spotted any questions. So
Okay. Oh, Bobby said I got ridiculed for having my chihuahua on a muzzle and got mocked since a little dog can't do much damage, but she needed stitches after she bit me. As a fellow chihuahua owner, I could definitely relate, and I do think that there is absolutely a place for muzzles for all breeds of dogs, no matter what
Right.
size.
Yeah.
Small dogs too, definitely. And I think actually small dogs are so often their signals are ignored, they're not taken seriously, and actually they can escalate so much more than sometimes bigger dogs because we give them the opportunity to do that and we don't listen to their behaviors. So actually having a small dog muzzled is so important. So please don't ever feel silly having a chihuahua with a muzzle. If I could find one tiny enough, my Flora would have one too, just in case. And she only has 2 teeth. Scroll around the bottom. Oh, there's Diesel. Brilliant. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. If you have any questions at any point, you can email me. It's info@themuzzlemovement.com, and that will come straight to me. Pop any questions over. If you've got any questions that you think of for Rebecca, I'm sure I can forward them. Or I can answer them myself if I know the answer. I'll just quickly let you know as well, I've just launched our Just In Case campaign. So this is kind of like an industry-wide campaign to get every dog muzzle trained, just in case, whether that's fully muzzle trained, which would be the dream, or at least just having a good positive introduction to muzzles. We've created resource packs for various different industries within the dog world. So we've got packs for trainers and behaviorists, for veterinary teams, for groomers, for rescues, and for breeders. So if you are one of those breeders who is really take the time with that early socialization and you want your puppy families to continue with that information and to get those resources, you can sign up. We've got free client packs, we've got social media posts so that you can spread the kind of normalization of muzzles and the advocacy of muzzles. You've got some posters as well if you've got somewhere to put them when your puppy families come and collect. So there's loads and loads of resources there for you. So you can sign up to that. I'll send out an email with the link after for you to sign up for those free resources if you're at all interested. But thank you so much for coming along and giving up an hour of your Friday night to come and listen to us talk about muzzles. Can't believe you've got nothing better to do. But no, thank you so much for coming. And this will be going onto YouTube probably next week sometime. So if you want to rewatch or if you want to share with anybody who you think will find it useful, then you can find it on there. Rebecca, thank you so much again. It was honestly fascinating, and yeah, I could listen to you speak all day. I really could.
My pleasure.
I'll give you a call sometime.
Fantastic evening, guys. Thank you
so much. Thank you.